I just got done watching the Megan Thee Stallion Amazon Prime documentary, in my words, or in her words. It was really good. Let's talk about it. All right, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. I'm Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. I am back so soon. So soon after a 3 video blitz on the I Refuse podcast YouTube channel. Made it to the weekend, this close, yada yada yada. Just got done watching the Megan Thee Stallion documentary on Amazon Prime called In My Words. I'm sure one of y'all will correct me. And you know what? Really, really good documentary. I like that it wasn't centered around the shooting. I went into it, I was like, is this really what we're doing? But I have to understand and realize that that's just a happenstance. I mean, not trying to minimize it for those of you that like any kind of critical thinking, not trying to minimize it. There's definitely a lot more to Megan Thee Stallion, and this documentary aims for that goal. One of the most important things and most important takeaways for me leaving the documentary after it finished was that Megan Thee Stallion was very, very close to her mom. And you get pretty much from the gate that sense that bond, and essentially her most important inspiration was her mom. It was clear that like her mom was a direct inspiration. Her mom also wrote, her mom rapped, her mom was with her along the way, every step of the way during that mixtape phase, the YouTube phase. And unfortunately, and I didn't know the gravity to which, their bond was so tight and so close. Um, to get insight into that, and then, just as things are, she's literally on the precipice of like blowing up. And I'm saying that because we know how that went. That just as she was just on the brink, her mom had the tumor. It didn't go into detail as to how long, not that it really would have had any bearing one way or another, but she declined considerably fast. And she passed in March of 2019. Literally, like the year before things went like skyrocketed. Um, and another thing about the documentary is that it aims to humanize Megan Thee Stallion and really give us a base as to more so Megan Pete, the person, and the role that she plays in Megan Thee Stallion and vice versa, and what Megan Thee Stallion gives Megan Pete, who was very tall, early in life, literally down in grade school, and Megan Pete was picked on because of her height and made her cry a lot and everything. Um, and growing up, she was very close to her mom, her grandmother, and the female members of her family. Um, Down in Houston rap scene, Swisher House, all that stuff was happening and everything. And she even details parts about, her relationship with her father, who was in jail for most of her childhood. He'd served his time, came out, and the relatively short amount of time that they had together, he also poured into her about everybody that grin ain't your friend, just making her more streetwise. While her mom gave her more of the female confidence that I think inspired her to turn into, create this Megan Thee Stallion character. Um, so you get the family aspect, and it's such a shame to me that her mom passed like literally right before WAP and the debut album and the Grammys and SNL and like all this stuff. Because by 2019, Megan Thee Stallion had been doing it, I want to say, probably like 3 or so years. And, you had the mixtapes and everything, and she was building the fan base, and just about everybody in Houston knew who she was. And then at some point, it expanded into other areas. And she was able to tour in small venues and do all that other stuff. And things were going. And then for your mom to pass away, and she's carrying that grief since 2019. Now, I wasn't sure where the documentary was going to go after that. Now, I went into it as somebody from a perspective from the outside. Like, the shit that happened in 2020, I reacted to that from the perspective that all of y'all had. So, from that point, she slowly starts to work her way through things. The relationship she had with Kelsey, they had been best friends for a considerable amount of time. She brought Kelsey in not to replace her mom, but more as, I want to say, like a security blanket in a way. A steady, well-trusted person that is with me, that can help me along the way. And Kelsey is in the documentary in those earlier points. And then at some point, probably at the same time, Tori comes into the picture over here. And I didn't know that there was at least a year before of that kind of dynamic. And from Megan's perspective, she looked at both of them as friends of hers. She bonded with Tori because he too lost his mom. So, there is definitely a theme established, another theme established early on, that, the trauma bonding, And what is it called? The Superman syndrome, the Superman complex, where you get attached pretty quickly to a person that is, in your eyes, a comfort. In your eyes, um, they're keeping things light is a form of escapism from your grief. Because you got to keep in mind, you know, her mom had passed in 2019. Um, and not too long after that, Kelsey's in the picture more, and Megan is hanging out with Tori around that same time. And when I saw him pop up in the documentary, I was like, it shook me because I was like, I would have never imagined in my life that these two would be like running buddies. First of all, he's not a rapper. Um, he's from Canada. What would be any degree of separation that would link these two together? So I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I see where this is going now. We're going to eventually get to that night. And she details it. And while she is talking, the voiceover, the scenes that are playing out, as she's talking about the timeline of things leading up to the night of the incident, um, they put in like Instagram live moments between Megan and Tori, and there are quite a few. Now the last one I saw where they were in the pool, couldn't tell if that was at the party that they were at that evening. I don't think so, but it was very intimate. So that particular night, the night that everybody keeps harping on, no, she starts from they were leaving the party, and there was a three-way argument. Tori and Kelsey in the back, Megan and the bodyguard in the front, or the security bodyguard is driving the SUV. From her perspective, she's saying that he is not taking it too well that women are talking back, women are speaking up, and so on and so forth. Don't know the nature of the conversation watching the documentary, but because it's getting a little too heated, she gets out the car and starts to walk off, still in her swimsuit. And he's yelling at her to come back, and she eventually does come back. And then, she gets back in the truck. Things continue to escalate in the vehicle. She gets out. She starts to walk off. And at this point, not only is he yelling at her out, from inside the truck, or he's like behind the door or whatever, he is aiming a gun at her and telling her to dance, bitch, and fires at her. And he ends up striking her. So there are a couple of things in the documentary, especially around this experience, that really tripped me out, and really made me feel sorry for Meg, especially considering the extent of the hate she received. from male celebrities, male podcasters. And, at the time in 2020, 2021, I was removed from that. I wasn't on Twitter like that. I was just doing the podcast. And having an individual mindset of my own, I have more questions when I initially got the story and everything. But I'm not Megan Thee Stallion. That's the difference. So I eventually pivoted off of that mindset. Um, One thing that really stuck out to me that about Megan that is in a way commendable, um, but also kind of wild, which is a thing that women do, is, protect the person that literally just hurt them. While she is on the ground, by this point, the cops have arrived. They're asking everybody to exit the vehicle, show their hands, lay on the ground, and everything. And this is still in the throes of George Floyd, police brutality, all that other stuff. So that's going through Megan's mind at that time. She didn't want possibly the blood of a man on her hands. So when the police officer asked her what happened, given that he saw the blood on her foot, she was like, all right, I don't want this man to end up dead by the hands of the police out here. So I'm not going to tell them that he has a gun and that he shot me. I just stepped on some glass. And, it was at that moment I realized I need to pivot expeditiously away from some of the points I made in my last Megan video on my YouTube, I Refuse Podcast YouTube channel. There is definitely a psychology involved. And it's regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, it's a human aspect where you, even in the throes of these kind of situations, we still feel the need to protect people we still think are our friends, even after they've hurt us. I still do it. Even though looking back, I probably should have flipped the table and shook some shit up. Because over time you realize, as the other shoe begins to drop, that these people weren't your friends to begin with. And it's crazy that even as you go into situations with the purest of hearts, with the purest of intentions, that people still move the way that they do and nobody catches it. And even worse, insulate that shit. So it was at that moment I saw myself in Megan. I was like, I get it. I get it. So I continued to watch. Of course, by the time she got to the hospital, the truth was going to come out anyway. The doctor had the x-rays, can tell that's metal fragments in her foot that you don't get from glass. Those are bullet fragments. So it started to unravel. It's not good form, but I get it why she did that, even though it was that bastard. So as the documentary continues on, and they have a general timestamp on certain parts as they're telling it. The shooting happened in 2020. Um, the trial itself wasn't until about 2022. But between that time, Megan was railed through the hot coals for a long time on social media. And across TikTok, across podcasts, definitely Instagram and Twitter. Um, and people immediately took to free Tory Lanez and pro Tory Lanez and take another black man down. And, she did the Gayle King interview in 2020. And they got the other great thing about this documentary is that they didn't. She had been documenting the entire time throughout 2019, throughout 2020. I mean, of course, the moments with her mom was more like a home video kind of thing, but she had been documenting the entire time. So the prep work going into the Gayle King interview, bits and pieces of the Gayle King interview were made the documentary, and then her conversation with her manager after the interview, which occurred literally in the same house that she was staying in. And she was pissed being asked that question about sexual relations with Tory Lanez, as she should be, because it's why is that relevant to the shooting? And a lot of people deemed that those line of questionings to be misogynistic. But of course, we all know that she fessed up later on that she had lied about not having sexual relationship. Me in my eyes, I'm like, a couple of drive-bys with the dude ain't the same as a sexual relationship. Like, a sexual relationship is like there's some level of aftercare after the fact. Um, but I get it. It's like the nigga shot me. Why the fuck does me sleeping with him part of this interview? Um, and I realized at that point that Megan was not media trained like to the top level. You have to be prepared going into these interviews. Sometimes some of these interviews can be worse than being on the stand in a trial. Um, Especially like if you're sitting across from Robin Roberts, if you're sitting across from Gayle King, if you're sitting across from Diane Sawyer, um, and when she was alive, Barbara Walters, in their own style, in their own way, they're going to ask you questions that are not, you don't deem decent, you don't deem fair. Um, that's just the nature of the game. And I don't think Megan Thee Stallion was prepared for that. I definitely wouldn't be. Um, but I felt like when it played back, her response played back, I felt like she still was trying to protect Tori and Kelsey again at this point. Um, so we get through we get through that part. At some point, it gets out that he gets charged, multiple charges. Um, and another part about this whole situation that I didn't know a couple years ago is that not even not even 48 hours after she got shot by Tory Lanez, Kelsey met with him privately. And I believe she found this out after Kelsey started doing those IG Live videos. And you know how I didn't really give Kelsey a lot of mercy. She is just as equally a party to this as Tori. And this only further solidifies my point. That part I did not know. That part about just the fact that she started going on IG Live like immediately to air Megan out because y'all both were fucking the same dude. It's very much given like Jerry Springer at this point. And whether Kelsey wants to believe it or not, you are setting the stage for this perception that you weren't a true friend to Megan Thee Stallion. And that you were more, it matters more to prove your point and be right than to have peace. Because one thing about a lick back, you gotta pick your spots. And over some dick that wasn't dating either one of y'all, that is going to be in Camp Cupcake for 10 years, it's just not worth it. And you know the nigga shot your friend. If anything, you should be by your friend's side. And this all happened before the ad, the Nicki clothes and shoes photo spread that Kelsey did. This was still in 2020. Like it should, if shit is true and shit is real, it should not be that easy. But it's again, it's like I've said on the podcast time and time again, no matter how far away you get out of the hood or the trap or whatever you want to call it, some people have hood trap ways. So, it's when it comes to Kelsey, the juice was not worth the squeeze. It was just not worth it. And on top of the emotional and the mental damage, and you still have to deal with Megan while also committing to career obligations and commitments, live shows, interviews, tour dates, small venues, big venues, studio time. Like, the shooting happened, WAP dropped, the biggest song of her and Cardi B's career. Just a one-off single that people took to immediately. hot like fish grease, literally a career high point, while also navigating a personal low point. That's a lot. So I totally understand why she took a month-long break for therapy. They say therapy, um, or an undisclosed location, but I understand it. And they were still raking her through hot coals. Um, and by that point, there were so many bigger things to have a roundtable discussion about. But I can't believe we were like throwing our, well, y'all were throwing yourselves on the sword for that little midget, especially after trying to like hurt a woman on phone recordings, trying to pay folks off for silence, only to then turn around and go on IG and pivot, like get put out this narrative that you're an innocent man, only to then do another pivot and continue to harass that girl through tweets, through music and music video imagery, um, portraying yourself in a music video as a butcher, chopping up a horse leg, like literally provoking and baiting and poking at her. And people are eating it up. And it's so wild to me that the moment they hear that somebody else is doing something that they've done before, they want to act like they're better. Very, very weird. Fucking stan culture. So 2021 rolls around. You know, she still has shows. I believe she had SNL around that time. And then, 2022 rolls around. She starts recording songs for her follow-up album to Good News. And we're about 8 months out from the trial, which was in late 2022. And she still has shows. She still has shit she needs to do. Um, and she's still not out of grieving, her mom. And on top of that, the shit that comes with fame. And one thing I realized probably by the halfway mark is that Lorianne Gibson is featured very prominently throughout, I want to say, the first half to the midsection of the documentary as her creative director. As they are doing rehearsals for shows, Lorianne Gibson is right there. As Megan Thee Stallion is literally feeling like she's on the verge of throwing up and giving up, Lorianne Gibson steps in and says, "Look, I've seen you." And she gives her this little pep talk, which I notice she gives without blinking. Like, she doesn't blink a whole lot, which means she's dead ass serious. And if there's a person that needs to have their story told, Because, Honey, the movie, wasn't enough. Um, Loriann Gibson's story needs to be told. She may be as crazy as a soup sandwich, but she, her style and her technique of getting through the artist and getting the best out of them may not rub everybody the right way. It may not be politically correct. Um, but you can't deny that Loriann Gibson has a resume. Um, Worked with Prince, worked with Debbie Allen, worked with Michael Jackson. Um, I believe she even worked with the Fly Girls of Living Color, or she was one of the Fly. Like, and we all know the infamous throwdown that she had with Diddy, but I already talked about that. Loriann Gibson, she may not be wrapped too tight sometimes, but she's always on it. Even if it comes across sometimes that she is putting a little too much 20 on 10, Loriann Gibson has the catalog to back up the quirks and stuff, because those are very prominent in the in the documentary as well. Um, she doesn't strike me. I haven't noticed her to like blink a whole lot when she talks, um, and she's really like wrapped up and like serious and passionate about artists and dancing and choreography and everything. So when she's talking to the little white man from Rock Nation, and she's like looking right at him, and she's talking, 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 and he's looking like over here, or you know, it literally looks like he's like thinking of what he wants from Panera. No shade. But she sometimes Loriann strikes me in the documentary as this like bag lady that's just like walking from office to office, just talking to people that didn't know they wanted conversation, didn't know they needed conversation. They're just on their laptop and they just have this random woman standing in the doorway of the office just talking to them. A little weird. But creative director during those times, and not just the tours, but the live performances in between. But that was very interesting to see that Loriann Gibson is very prominent in this documentary. Um, and seeing her pour into Megan Thee Stallion, probably at the time Megan Thee Stallion didn't want to hear it, but Megan Thee Stallion stressed pretty early on in the documentary as she speaks on her mom's passing, how much her mom had poured into her, and the reaffirming, the positive reinforcements, the good job type of things. To not have that, you know, Megan felt like, did I do a good job? She does one thing and moves to the next thing, and then she kind of looks back and she's like, well, did I do a good job? Um, so to have Loriann Gibson kind of be her kooky self, it I think it worked. So Megan does the album, um, starts doing live performances leading up to the release of. I still fucks with Plan B. I am definitely going to go back to Traumazine and put that on. When Good News came out, I wore that out in 2020. Um, I still say it sucks that it came out on the heels of the shooting, because the shooting and all that drama that came with that kind of overshadowed how good the album was. Um, but if there's one thing that's clear to me about Megan Thee Stallion, is that very resilient, very very resilient. She kept recording, kept doing music, kept doing the live performances. Like, she was working nonstop during that time. So what's a month, right? Um, Watching the documentary, there wasn't a point where I felt like, oh, she's doing too much. Even without any context of mom passing and the shooting and everything, um, to constantly have a lot of people around you at all times, and then those same group of people literally be like in your face in this small ass green room after a performance on the show, I'll be a little tight. Um, and they're constantly like trying to like pour into her and say, well, it was flawless, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Essentially being yes man, which I hate. Because she just got off the stage. I think it was another SNL performance. She was in the prom dress pageant where had the sash and everything, and she was looking a little bulky. It was the costume, and she didn't. She felt that, but also didn't like how it came across on camera. So of course, Lorianne and Law keep in like fast order. It was flawless. It was great. It was flawless. It was great. It was flawless. You did that. You did that. You did that. That's how Lorianne is. You did that. You did that. That's so good. Megan was like, whatever, and walked off. You remember I just said not so long ago in this video that sometimes Lorianne can be putting 20 on 10. Like, that kind of can be a little bit much in tight spaces. Like, if we're in the parking lot, if we're outside the venue, and there is space to move around and be all, vit, 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 okay. But if we're in this small, tight ass green room, and I got all this layers of fabric on me, and this little pageant queen dress is digging into my sides. I probably got pressure marks. My titties is like in my rib cage. I don't want to hear nothing about what you talking about. And I'm the boss. I pay you hoes. I hate yes men. I hate flunkies. It's like, get a mind of your own. Moving on. So you get to the trial. Of course, people outside the courthouse are like coming at the girl's neck as she's walking in. And of course, hyping Tori up and kind of being like middle ground with Kelsey as she's walking in. And, at this point, I don't think Megan was prepared that she would have to actually relive this on the stand in front of a bunch of people that she didn't want to see ever again. Especially given what she knew went down behind the scenes. Um, and it was so wild. This is the other thing about fake friends and people that grin ain't your friend. Nobody was in Megan's corner. Kelsey just kind of just went on about her life. Um, chose Dick over her friend, which is one of the saddest stories in a woman's life. Like, you two were a drive by, and he ain't all that cute. You look dusty. No, let me stop. but um, she got through the trial best she could. I'm sure she cried a whole lot, but also had to the best of her ability, keep her composure. And the shit never stopped. The shit never stopped, and she had to continue with her career. Um, I mean, if I was her at that point, I would have deactivated my social media account, all of them. But another great thing about the documentary that I loved is that with the behind the scenes stuff and the intimacy aspect, you're up close and personal with Megan Thee Stallion, is that you you get to hear firsthand the experience of what this kind of thing can do to a person's mental state. There's paranoia involved, there's anxiety involved because of the advent of social media. You don't know who is going to pop up and berate you and harass you and follow you, chanting the kind of things that they were chanting outside the courthouse. You don't know where your safe place is. And it could have been real nasty had the home invasion of her LA property happened while she was home. Because you got to remember, this is 2020. Um, people, rappers were being wiped out in the afternoon, sometimes in the late hours in their house during the course of a burglary. Targeted hits are happening more. Um, it's even happening to people that are not rap artists. They are legendary executives. And their house, during the course of their house being burglarized, their spouse gets killed. I hate to think what would have happened had she been home instead of in New York going for that bag and doing SNL, which yeah, that's not an opportunity I would pass up. Um, and she did really good on SNL. She did a couple of skits. She was pretty funny, um, and she did a couple of performances. And it takes a lot of strength when you are having breakdowns and meltdowns and feeling lost that You pack that up in a chest somewhere, put that to the side, and you get to your duty. So again, like Megan gets love from me, um, even if the character part needs some work. Still an adult and still a human at the end of the day. It's just it sucks. These learning lessons and these blessings and stuff. But her daddy told her, everybody that grin ain't your friend. I implore y'all to watch the documentary and and do it all in one sitting. We got to experience Megan as she's going through things that are happening to her um, in life, career, social media being an asshole. Um, and we even get to experience her reaction to Tori getting count one, immediately 10 years, and how she broke down. And I felt every bit of that. I felt every bit of that where in that moment you feel like you can finally close that chapter and walk away from that. Um, Only to then realize that some of y'all out here are still keeping that shit going. And I'll be honest, I take full accountability for my part. Um, my intuition is not often the best. I am not pussy popping or moonwalking off of everything I said. Um, because I have my standards and ethics when it comes to friendships. Um, that you just do not cross that line. But I already said what I had to say in the last video. So here we are, it's 2024. Megan has dropped a new album, dropped in an act two, and is on a sold out tour. Tory Lanez is in jail. Kelsey is somewhere probably plotting another way to still be part of the conversation. And at the end of the day, people are going to be mad. People are going to be whatever. But Megan's still going to get money. So please go out. Well, you ain't got to go out nowhere. Go to your TV and put on this documentary, Megan Thee Stallion documentary. It's really, really good. I really wish her mom was here to see where she is now. Um, that was wild how fast she steadily declined with the brain tumor. And, it's such a shame that her dad, man, he died real early when she was in ninth grade. neither of her parents are here to see how crazy successful she is. And that's just a testament to her strength and her perseverance. Um, so this is Miss Foxy I Refuse podcast. Y'all go check out the documentary. In the meantime, get into the I Refuse podcast wherever you get your podcast and the YouTube channel. Usual Suspects podcast is still alive and well. We just dropped episode 20 yesterday of season 2. I did a major snafu during the production of that episode. And if you feel so inclined, the I Refuse podcast After Dark, and follow and subscribe to the Twitter at I Refuse Podcast, all one word. Instagram at I Refuse Podcast _ between the words. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse Podcast.